I'm not at all. I think this is the classic. I'm ready to break up, and I start picking fights. He wants to be a Laker, and he's showing the Lakers. I'm a leader. I'm going to call out guys. He's showing Larry Bird. I'm going to go to you when we get swept here, and I'm going to say, Larry, you didn't get enough pieces. This is what you do when you want to break up in a relationship or with a company. You start complaining about stuff that's not that big. You start going public. You start picking fights. Paul George doesn't want to be here. Paul George is frustrated. The town's frustrated increasingly with Larry Bird. He wants to go big market. He's from California. He is sending messages out with trading deadline. Hey, man, I need more players. Game 1 loss. I need the shot. There. My guys aren't helping me. That's messaging.
Hold on. There's another guy in Indianapolis, big star, who you have asked repeatedly, be out more spoken about the situation in Indianapolis. And not all the time it has to be about exiting. It could be about wanting to win a championship.
It could be.
Which Paul George, before the All-Star break or right around the All-Star break, said, hey, I want this thing to improve. And then right after the All-Star break, he said, hey, look, I want to win a championship here in Indiana. I think Paul George is misguided here. I think the Pacers are playing actually well in this series. They've lost 2 tough road games. He should be going with positive motivation, not negative motivation. Cleveland struggles on the road. If they can win 2 in Indiana and maybe get lucky in one of these games in Cleveland, I think he's making a mistake. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. He wants to see the Pacers improve, more talent around him, more so than he just wants to get out of town.
Colin, what you're saying could, in fact, and probably is true, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he's trying to set some sort of narrative that allows him to get out of town. Right. I mean, the fact is that he didn't really call out Lance. He was asked about Lance. Lance's body language was terrible last night, okay? It just was. He was a -7. They were worse off when he was on the floor, and it became a winnable game only in the fourth quarter. I thought that showed great leadership. And, when he's talking about Miles Turner, he's right. Miles Turner, even the highlight he went soft to the basket. LeBron blocked his shot. Right. He's getting pushed around the boards by Tristan Thompson, and he simply point out, look, he's young. We're still going to work with him. He's got to focus on keeping Tristan off the boards to help us win. I think that's leadership. That you guys both know this, and Jason, you talk about this often, that athletes have a kind of different sensibility. We have a different kind of layer of toughness, and we're so used to watching film and having it pointed out when we make a mistake that we're not as bothered by it. And what happens with media types is they're not used to being called out. People asked him about Miles Turner, and he said he's got to get tougher on the boards. They asked about Lance Stevenson, and he's like, dude, his body language, he's a leader. He's got to show his way to be a leader. He may want out of town, but I don't think that's why he answered the questions in honest fashion.
Right, I agree with you, Doug, that, yes, he did do that, but that doesn't mean that he's ultimately trying to get the result that you're trying to get. Leadership is very, very tough. And Paul George has not been known as a great leader.
Thank you.
So what about him now trying to come in his own as a leader, now going against LeBron again? He has had no success against LeBron. So that frustration, but give me some help, not only as far as players. Complain about Lance. Lance didn't have a great matchup. I mean, he was guarding Kevin Love. So Lance's body language is the same body language as 95% of the NBA players when I watch every night. So be careful in your leadership in commenting about your teammates, because how that's depicted, what you're saying and what they hear might be 2 different things. So you have to be real, real careful in being that leader.
So you're an indie guy.
Yeah.
So
I'm a Pacer guy.
I grew up on the West Coast. I hear I want out to L.A. You hear...
I hear he wants things to improve there because, listen, he may be interested in L.A., but because of the new collective bargaining agreement, he would have to take a little bit of a shave pay-wise. They can pay him more in Indiana than they can in L.A. Larry Bird, again, he hasn't been the greatest executive, but he's still highly respected in Indiana. And if Paul George really wants out, Larry Bird's not going to fight him. You don't have to make a mess to get out of Indiana. If you I follow Larry Bird's comments all year about Paul George. If Paul George doesn't want to be in Indiana, Larry Bird, okay,
And oh, yeah, by the way, when Larry Bird was a player, this was the type of leadership that he would show. Look, I think the video helps him because it shows that his tone, that his own body language was not off, okay? It was not incendiary comments. It was very, very matter of fact, especially in regards to Lance, when he backed it up by saying, look, in our locker room, he's supposed to be a leader. When you're a leader, you can't act that way.
And that's got to be a problem there. When you have Lance and you're looking for him for leadership, you know the roster's not strong.
Listen, I like the way Lance Stevenson played last night. I don't blame him for being frustrated when Nate McMillan says, yeah, you know what? We're going to put Lance Stevenson on Kevin Love. No one on it. And look, he can't, Paul George can't criticize the coach, but maybe that's where it should be directed.
But if you're guarding Kevin Love, that means Kevin Love should be checking you. That means you should have a huge night at the offensive end.
Guy played 26 minutes out there. Lance was effective.